really strong storm continues to hit and affect the sea pens here. We walked down here about 15 minutes earlier, and just as we walked down we heard a big snap, and one of the pens in the back, if you can see that very back pen, the wooden part of the walkway is broken in half. So that just happened a few minutes ago. The trainers have not been down here for a while. There were a couple out here earlier trying to do some repairs. We reported that broken sea pen to the police, and they said they would report it to the owners or whoever is in authority of this facility. We're the only ones down here with the dolphins at the moment. These conditions are super rough. As you can clearly see, there's lots of dolphins in there. Many of which were captured very recently this month. You can see in this front pen also one of the floats, that black barrel looking object, has flipped over, and the net's kind of all tangled up in it. Just lots of dolphins in here. We know there's the pantropical spotted, bottlenose, and rhesus dolphin that were captured this month, as well as some pilot whales and other dolphins that were captured in previous drives and previous seasons. There's tons of debris being washed around in the water as well. As you can see by those blue platforms, there's like pieces of trees and trash and all kinds of debris. And it also gets washed inside the pen. If you can see inside the one to the front here, it's all washed in there and kind of up against the left side. There's a lot of those dolphins in this larger pen as well. The front one on the right hand side where the black float is kind of flipped over, it looks like the walkway has also broken there. Unfortunately the nets are still intact there, that traps the dolphins in there, and even if they were able to escape, it's very unlikely that they would actually leave. These dolphins have all been conditioned already to accept food from trainers and to essentially think that trainers are the only food source available to them now. So it's very unlikely that they would leave out of their own will. And furthermore, unfortunately it's very unlikely that they would be able to find their way back out to the open ocean and find their pod if they were able to get out. And having that pod, having that social group would be vital to their survival in the wild. Would be vital for them to be able to find food and to travel and to socialize and reproduce. Yeah, so this front pen is really in pieces now. The front walkway is broken. There's a dolphin that just surfaced outside by the net there. Or inside the pen, I'm sorry. These two pens on the far left, the front and the back, are getting the roughest part of these because they're right in the headway of the waves. The waves are coming from the right hand side to the left hand side, so they're getting the bulk of the roughness. Please continue to share this live stream, folks. We weren't able to stay live too long earlier when we did our earlier live stream because the rain was coming down on us pretty hard and the tide was coming up. But the rain is not as bad at the moment and the wind has subsided a little bit. Oh, the float just completely came off there. Now it's floating freely in the dolphin's pen. But as I was saying, we'll try to sustain this live stream for a bit longer. The more eyes we can get on this, the better. There's just no limit to the cruelty that dolphins endure here, unfortunately. The more we can expose this, the better. And this pen just behind the blue platforms contains several rhesus dolphins. The pen on the front on this side's got one Pacific white-sided, several bottlenose, and several pan-tropical spotted dolphins. There's a couple that just surfaced there. And the back pen that's also broken contains a lot of pan-tropical spotted dolphins. A lot of these pens are very overcrowded. I know it's kind of hard to tell when the dolphins don't surface all together, but there are a lot of dolphins in here. And the back pen by where the boat is contains a couple pilot whales. And then there's more bottlenose dolphins in this larger pen here. Yeah, and this, folks, this is a storm. This isn't even a typhoon. So just imagine how much worse it gets when a typhoon hits here. Our team earlier this season in October documented the impact of Typhoon Hagibis on this very same facility. It was just in shambles. There was pens flipped over, all kinds of things were breaking apart. You can just see how much with the platforms shaking around, just really the impact of all this. These dolphins are completely exposed to the elements. They're exposed to the storm surge, and they're tossed around in those pens and those small enclosures, those small overcrowded enclosures. And all the debris, as you can see, gets washed in there. The runoff from land gets also washed into the water. And these are not the only pens here. Distance, there's a huge cluster of pens over the bay also. And there's another cluster kind of off to the left as well. A huge number of dolphins in this area. There's also sea pens inside the Taiji harbor. This storm has lasted several days now. Now seems to be the worst it's been in terms of the impact on the sea pens. Wipe off the lens a little bit here. Yeah, the two pens on the far right are broken. This one is cracked on the front side, and one of the floats is loose. The black barrel-looking object is afloat. It's completely broken off of there, and it's floating around in the sea pen. It's kind of stuck in the corner. And then the pen on the back also broke. That wooden walkway is just floating around, split in half there. That one actually broke just as we came down here. We heard a really loud snap. And so these dolphins are just left completely alone for hours and hours enduring this. This facility endured a lot of damage through the typhoon season last fall, and they've been doing some repairs off and on since then. They actually installed a brand new gate up here, and we're working on some of the walkway that goes down to the facility. And now it's getting a lot of damage again from this storm. Trying to keep our lens free from droplets here so it stays a little more in focus. There's really nowhere for these dolphins to escape. If they were in the open ocean, they could stay down for deep dives and not have to endure all the waves and the surge. But in this very small enclosure, in this very exposed location, there's nowhere for them to escape. When it comes to location of a sea pen, there's a huge impact on the welfare of the dolphins within them. Japan itself is quite prone to storms and typhoons, but this particular location, the peninsula that Taiji is on, sticks out into the Pacific Ocean. So whenever a storm hits, it's quite highly impacted. And the dolphins we're seeing now, many of them were captured this month from the drives in the past few weeks. This is all part of the cycle of cruelty, unfortunately. It's all ultimately fueled by the global demand for captive dolphins. As long as marine parks and aquariums continue to purchase these dolphins to put in tanks and to exploit and profit off of, and as long as consumers continue to buy tickets to those facilities, it's ultimately going to cause this cycle to continue. It's a cycle of capturing dolphins, putting them in these pens, training them and selling them, and ultimately subjecting them to a lifetime of exploitation. Bottlenose dolphin here, just kind of floating at the surface. Dolphins have quite good vision. A lot of the times when we visit this facility, it's visible from a public sidewalk here, so sometimes we'll walk by here. And the dolphins do react to our presence, so it seems that they can see us. And a lot of people are asking at the probability of escape these dolphins have during this storm. I explained it a little bit earlier, but I'll run through it again. Unfortunately, there's a lot of factors working against a successful escape. For one, these dolphins have all been conditioned to accept fish from trainers. And they've been conditioned in turn to think that the only food source available to them now is from the trainers. So even if the pens do break even more than they already have, it's very unlikely that the dolphins would leave this area because they think that the trainers are their only food source now. And also the likelihood of them actually getting out to the open ocean from here and finding their pod is very low. They would need to have their pod with them for their best chance at survival out in the wild. Dolphins are extremely social animals, They need their pod to hunt and find food out there. They travel with their pod, they socialize with their pod, and they need their pod to reproduce and raise their young. So unfortunately, there's just a lot of factors working against an escape scenario. Please continue to share this live stream, folks, so we can expose yet another aspect of cruelty that captive dolphins face. Encourage your friends and followers to go to the link that's pinned in the comments. Just a lot of these floats seem to be coming loose. There's that black one that's been floating in this front pen here. It's kind of been stuck in the corner. And there's a couple other that are bobbing around as if they're loose. The storm is expected to continue into the evening today and then kind of calm down from there. The storm has lasted for about 3 days now here. How it is now seems to be the worst it has been. The waves and the surge weren't quite as bad in the past 2 days. For the next several hours at least, these dolphins are going to continue to endure this. There's going to be more and more debris that enters the water. There's like pieces of trees out here floating as well. Last season, about September, October of 2018, there was a big typhoon that hit here, and a few of the dolphins in the sea pens, not these particular ones, but the ones that are across the way over there, some of them actually died from the typhoon and from being trapped in their sea pen. So just the stress and the physical battering that these dolphins are enduring is just really, really significant. These bottlenose dolphins keep kind of bobbing around at the surface. And another question we get quite often is, why don't we intervene? Why don't we do something? Unfortunately, the drive hunts and these captive facilities are closely monitored by local authorities. Our Cove Monitor team is followed by police during our entire stay in Taiji. We're constantly followed. Any interference would likely result in arrest or deportation, which would potentially affect the ability to document the cruelty that happens here and the drive hunts in the future. So while Dolphin Project is here in Taiji, we act completely within the law. We're here to document what happens to the dolphins and expose it to the world, so that people everywhere may be moved to take action and may be moved to end their support of dolphin captivity. It's up to people like us and people like you who continue to share and expose and start conversations about this. It's up to all of us to change how the world sees dolphin captivity. We're making an impact. Last year, Canada banned dolphin and whale captivity and passed a historic anti-captivity law. A few years back, South Korea also banned the importation of Taiji dolphins. Aquariums and zoos within Japan were also banned from buying Taiji's dolphins due to an order by JAZA, the Japanese Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So we've got to keep going. There's still a lot of things we need to do. We've got to continue exposing all the cruelty that happens here, so that more and more countries, more and more cities and states and everywhere will start to pass measures to ban dolphin captivity. And ultimately, we've got to educate consumers so they stop buying tickets. These pens are just completely being battered. These ones on the right hand side especially are getting the bulk of the roughness. That's where the waves are hitting the strongest. The waves are coming from the right and hitting towards the left. Both of these pens, the front and the back one, have broke. The walkways on the very front and the very back have snapped in half. And several of the black floats are loose and floating around. Even with how the bird is flying, you can see how strong the wind is. There's tons and tons of debris being washed around. There's a lot of pieces of trees stuck against the corner by those blue floats. There's a lot of debris inside the pen also. Once the debris gets in the pen, it's pretty much trapped there. So the dolphins are left to be tossed around in the storm surge and to have all that debris floating around at the surface. Earlier when we were here this morning, there were a couple trainers out there working to secure parts of the pens, it seems like. But now there's no one out here. It's extremely dangerous at that for having any sort of work to be done out there. The fact that they were out there at all this morning is quite concerning. Not only does this facility seem to disregard the welfare of these dolphins, but it seems to disregard the welfare of their employees as well, to send them out in conditions like this. bottlenose dolphin has just been going around and around in circles. These sea pens are not very deep. The water level here is not deep at all to begin with. This is pretty far back in a bay that's a little bit more sheltered from the open ocean. So it's not that deep in the bay to begin with. These dolphins really have nowhere to escape. There's nowhere to dive down to. And many of them are quite overcrowded as well. You know, it's kind of hard to tell with the state of things and not being able to see all of the dolphins surface at once. But the two pens on the far right, the front and the back, seem to be particularly overcrowded. This front one's got one Pacific white-sided, several bottlenose, and several pantropical spotted dolphins, at least, that we've sighted in the days before this storm. And then the back pen has at least 7 pantropical spotted dolphins. It's a very, very small enclosed space for wild animals that were swimming the open ocean just a matter of weeks ago. And this front pen here, just behind the blue floats, has at least 5 rhesus dolphins. Rhesus dolphins are quite large. They can grow to be up to 12 feet in length. It's a very, very small space for that many large animals. And the back pen's got at least 2 pilot whales. Pilot whales are even larger. Folks, please continue to share this live stream. The more we can expose this, the better. Due to how some captive facilities advertise themselves, some people tend to think that a sea pen facility is quote-unquote okay to go to as opposed to a tank facility. But clearly, this is not the case. Many cases, sea pen facilities are completely exposed to storms, to typhoons, to hurricanes. Location is a huge, huge factor on the welfare of captive dolphins in sea pens. Unfortunately, many captive facilities don't seem to take that into a big consideration. pens are just in shambles. And again, folks, these aren't the only sea pens here. This is just the ones that we can kind of get the best view on. There's a huge number of pens out further in the bay. You guys, it's kind of hard to see with the amount of rain and mist, but there's a huge cluster of pens in there. And then another cluster in the middle of the bay as well. There. There's also sea pens inside Taiji Harbor. So there's a lot of captive dolphins in during this storm. Guys, so if just a storm can have this much of an impact on these sea pens, just imagine what these dolphins have to go through during typhoon season, which is in the fall. Typhoons can be much more severe, and our team in October of this current drive season documented the impact of Typhoon Hagibis, and the damage and the impact on the dolphins was far more severe than it is now.